Why did Jaqen recruit Arya? And what do the Faceless Men want with her anyway? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we cover A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, as well as other great fantasy worlds like The Lord of the Rings. If that sounds good, there's a subscribe button in the bottom right of your screen. This is the latest in my series of videos about the Faceless Men in A Song of Ice and Fire. This video is a standalone video, but we'll be building on some things we talked about in previous ones, so if you want to go back and watch those first, then come back here, feel free. In a previous video, we tried to answer the tricky question of why Jaqen was in the caravan of recruits heading to the Night's Watch. It certainly wasn't to get close to Arya. Jaqen was already locked in that cage ready to head north well before Yoren randomly spotted Arya, cut her hair and smuggled her into the caravan. But Jaqen does seem to have hung around with the group because of Arya, and only left when his deal with her was done and he had suggested she go to Braavos with him. So what Jaqen saw in that period, roughly the span of A Clash of Kings, persuaded him to try to recruit her. So let's break down what he did see. Well, Jaqen takes an immediate interest in her, calling her over, asking her for favours and so on, and it's not hard to work out why. Her disguise, which was basically a haircut and a dirty face, may have been enough to fool casual observers, but to the trained eye like, say, a faceless man, well versed in disguising his own appearance and seeing through lies, it will have been immediately apparent that she was not who she claimed to be. Jaqen will have been intrigued by her straight away, and Arya, still only about 10 years old at this point, let's not forget, gave away plenty of clues to her secret identity. She carries around an expensively made sword, odd for an orphan boy from Flea Bottom, and when getting into a fight with one of the other boys in the caravan, she adopts a Braavosi water dancer's stance, showing she had been trained by an expert. Again, clearly not just a member of the King's Landing smallfolk. She noticeably never goes to the toilet at the same time as the other boys, is treated slightly differently by Yoren, and hides when the Goldcloaks come looking for an important person who may have escaped King's Landing. Finally, when the party is attacked, she shouts "Winterfell" as a battle cry. As I said, lots of rather glaring clues. So by the time Arya frees Jaqen from his cage, perhaps a couple of weeks later, if he has been paying attention, and I think we can safely assume that he will have been, he will have enough information to place her as a highborn lady from Winterfell on the run from King's Landing. Everyone knows that the Night's Watch are close to the Starks, and it doesn't take much imagination from that point to figure out that she is the missing Arya Stark. So, although Arya was surprised when Jaqen later addresses her by her real name, we shouldn't be. In the short journey from King's Landing to the south of the God's Eye Lake, Jaqen worked out who Arya was. Then he came back for her at Harrenhal. The question is why? The reason he gives is that the Red God demands 3 deaths in exchange for the 3 lives she saved from the fire. On the surface, this seems to make some sort of sense. The Faceless Men require a payment for each assassination, and "only death can pay for life" is a phrase we hear elsewhere in the Game of Thrones world. Mirri Maz Duur, for example, says it to Dany before taking her unborn child's life in exchange for Khal Drogo's. So it does seem to be some kind of principle of magic, and will have made some sort of sense to Arya. But I think we can see through this quite quickly. The causality here is the wrong way around, and it's not intentional on Arya's part. Intentionality is seemingly also a very important part of how magic works in this world. What I mean is that when she saved Jaqen, Rourke and Baita, Arya did not think that she was paying the price for 3 deaths, any more than any other character thinks that they need to kill someone just because they've saved someone's life. That's not how it works. And most importantly, Jaqen himself doesn't seem to care about this so-called balance of deaths for lives. Yes, he puts up a pretense of not wanting to kill multiple people in exchange for that 3rd name, but he does it. And doesn't follow up by saying that she must now save some lives to keep that balance going. Yes, the whole needing to order 3 deaths thing was very likely just a clever line to see whether Arya really would go through with killing people. It was a test. Jaqen returning to Arya and telling her she had to name 3 people who would die was not about balance or the Red God getting its due. It was about coming back for Arya, showing her what a faceless man can do, and seeing whether she really did have the character to kill people. He was thinking about recruiting her and wanted to see whether she had the stomach for it. Let's not forget that the Faceless Men are not a proselytizing faith. They don't go on missions or actively seek to convert the masses. They are happy for people to continue to worship whatever gods they already do. So in order to keep the Faceless Men going, they need to proactively recruit new Faceless Men. And Jaqen must have thought that Arya seemed perfect for their needs. You see, it's not just that he figures out that she's a highborn lady from Winterfell. In fact, that probably didn't play much into Jaqen's considerations at all. Instead, in the short term that Jaqen can observe Arya from the cage, he can see that she has everything he might want in an apprentice. She is clever, bold, and able to handle herself in a fight. Despite her flimsy disguise, she also seems to fool a lot of people. By this point, she has lived several distinct identities. Arya Stark, a street urchin in Flea Bottom, Arry in the Night's Watch caravan, and Weasel at Harrenhal. She is living the life of a face changer, even if she doesn't yet know how to change faces. And we know that she is also a talented warg or skin changer. It's not clear whether Jaqen could have known that, by observing one of her wolf dreams perhaps, but it certainly would have added to her appeal. She seems a natural at disguises, and she seems increasingly obsessed with death and killing, specifically the deaths of her enemies. Again, this will have been ideal from the perspective of the acolytes of the many-faced god of death. And added to all that, Arya is at a very impressionable stage of her life. She has just seen her father unjustly killed, had to send away her beloved direwolf, lost the teacher she had started to form a bond with, and found herself 1,000 miles from home with no friends or family to call on. She is all alone in the world. In other words, ripe for brainwashing. Bizarrely, she may even remind Jaqen of the waif when she was recruited, for she was also the child of an ancient noble house who lost a parent when she was young. And importantly, no one would miss Arya. No one even knew where she was. All of which would have been more than enough to make Jaqen want to hang around. She wasn't just a precocious child he could try to recruit, she must have met all of his criteria. And there was even something more going on here that will have really sealed the deal for him. Jaqen's return to Arya at Harrenhal in the books coincides with Arya reciting her list of people she wants to kill. This is, I think, a seriously overlooked point. She lists the people she wants dead out loud in a prayer before bed, thinking she is on her own, and then, the very next paragraph, Jaqen wakes her to tell her to give him 3 names of people who should die. To Jaqen, this will have seemed more than just a coincidence. It will have resonated for him with the origin story of the Faceless Men. That story, if you remember, is that the first Faceless Man heard the prayers of the slaves crying out in desperation and granted them the gift of death. Later, the first Faceless Man heard a different prayer for the death of one of the slave masters and granted that, too, in exchange for a lifelong service from the slave. In other words, the origin story of the Faceless Men is all about answering desperate prayers like Arya's for a murder in exchange for service. Because although we often talk of Arya's hit list or her kill list, she doesn't call it that. She calls it her prayer. Later on, she ends her prayer by saying Valar Morghulis. To a follower of the God of Many Faces who overheard this, it would be nothing less than a desperate prayer to his God, one that would need answering. So when Jaqen asked her to name some names, it probably wasn't just about providing some balance for the Red God, it was probably just as much about him testing her mettle, seeing whether she was the kind of person who could be a faceless man, because let's face it, it takes a very special kind of person to be able to callously sentence people to death, and it was simply answering her prayer as he saw it. He even went as far as telling her that she could ask him to kill a king, such as Joffrey, who was on her list, and he would do it, but she resists that. And if this was a test, she passes it with flying colours. She shows that she has the mentality as well as the natural talents to be a cold-hearted killer, remorselessly reeling off names of people for him to kill. So, having passed all his tests, he offers her an apprenticeship, effectively. The coin he gives her and the words he teaches her show that it is an open offer for whenever she wants to take it up. And he tries to tempt her by showing the cool face-changing trick, but when she says she has other things to do first, go home to Winterfell, he accepts her decision. He wants a willing and eager apprentice, not one who has business elsewhere that they think is more important. So when Arya does finally make it to the House of Black and White, she arrives with a recommendation from Jaqen in the form of the coin and the words, and an understanding on both sides that she is there to learn the secrets of the Faceless Men because she no longer yearns to be on Winterfell. She is figuratively giving up her old identity. In the next video, we will look at that a bit more, Arya's training and what that tells us about what the Faceless Men want from her, besides just becoming one of them. Will she become no one? That's next time. At this point, it's enough to see that Arya was the perfect recruit for the Faceless Men, and Jaqen must have seen that very quickly. Clever, capable and bold, adept at taking on new disguises and personalities, obsessed with death, able to stomach killing, at an impressionable age, and if she disappeared off to Braavos, no one would come looking for her there. Arya isn't just someone who might do well. She is the most promising future Faceless Man imaginable, and that's why Jaqen recruited her. But what do you think? Is there more to this than that? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to see more videos in this series about the Faceless Men in A Song of Ice and Fire, please click on the link to the playlist on the left of your screen. Or to support this channel, the best way to do that is by clicking on the link to my Patreon page on the right of the screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.